listen, just one more thing.
Hello there. Welcome to my review of episode 4 of season 4 of Columbo, Troubled Waters. First broadcast on the 9th of February 1975 on NBC. It was written by William Driscoll, based on a story by Jackson Gillis and Driscoll. Unfortunately, I couldn't find too much information on Driscoll. He was born on the 1st of March 1930 in Ohio and has writing credits for over 42 different shows, including 3 episodes of Columbo. Other shows he wrote for include Mavericks, The $6 Million Man, and Macmillan and Wife. He died on the 2nd of June 2006. He was 76. This episode was directed by returning director and friend of Peter Falk, Ben Gazzara. The episode begins, unusually, with Columbo running to get on board a cruise liner. He runs to the purser, played by returning actor Bernard Fox, having lost his wife somewhere on board. They are taking this cruise together. The captain arrives, Captain Gibbon, played by Patrick Macnee. Macnee was born Daniel Patrick Macnee on the 6th of February 1922 in London. His early life is fairly colourful. Born into, quite frankly, immense privilege and massive wealth, his parents split when his mother came out as a lesbian, and he was then kicked out of Eton for selling pornography and acting as a bookmaker for the other students. He later studied acting at Webber Douglas Academy of Dramatic Arts and was about to star in the West End with Vivian Leigh, but was called up to serve in the Royal Navy during World War II. He caught bronchitis just before D-Day, while his crew were all lost in action. He then gained acting experience in Canada and had some extra work in a few British films and some small roles in a few other films, but didn't make much of an impact until he was cast in his career-defining role of John Steed in The Avengers for British television, not to be confused with the Marvel superhero team of the same name. He would play Steed in every version of the TV series, including in the New Avengers. He would also appear in dozens of TV series over the many years of his career and in film, as well as continuing on the stage. His film roles include playing Sir Godfrey Tibbett in A View to a Kill, Sir Dennis Eaton Hogg in This Is Spinal Tap, and Sir Wilfrid in Waxwork and Waxwork 2. I'm sure you can see a pattern forming about his roles here. In later life, he would also appear in the video for the Oasis song Don't Look Back in Anger. He died on the 25th of June 2015. He was 93. Columbo leaves and the captain then greets Hayden and Sylvia Danziger, played by Robert Vaughan and Jane Greer respectively. Vaughan was born Robert Francis Vaughan on the 22nd of November 1932 in New York. He initially studied journalism before moving to Los Angeles with his mother after his parents had separated. He had small acting roles in many productions in film and television at this time before gaining a breakthrough role in The Young Philadelphian, which garnered an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Following this, with a memorable performance as Lee in The Magnificent Seven, and a few more TV appearances. He would then co-star with David McCallum in The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which, despite only being on the air for 4 years, was hugely influential. After his Columbo appearance, of which he would make 2, he went on to appear in major roles in The A-Team, Superman 3, Law and Order, and the BBC TV series Hustle as an aging con man. He was an eloquent and fervent political activist, the first household name to take a public stance against the Vietnam War, who would regularly debate his position in interviews and in public appearances. He died on the 11th of November 2016. He was 83. Greer was born Betty Jane Greer on the 9th of September 1924 in Washington, D.C. Beginning her career as a model, she became a big band singer before being spotted by Howard Hughes modelling in an issue of Life magazine, which would lead to a series of leading roles throughout the 40s and 50s. These included in Dick Tracy and in Sinbad the Sailor, Out of the Past and The Big Steal. Her film career would wane in the 60s and she made the move to television, appearing in Quincy M.E., Burke's Law, Murder, She Wrote and this episode of Columbo. She died on the 24th of August 2001. She was 76. We cut back to Columbo, who is talking to his wife on the phone. He still can't find her. The crew sets off and Danziger goes to see the purser about a missing room key. The purser gets him a spare as he studies the other keys. He bumps into Columbo as he's leaving. He returns to his room and, having taken note of a particular key number, he uses a key press and key codebook to cut himself another key. We may have just found our murderer. We then cut to the ship's band leader, Artie, played by Peter Maloney, a character actor probably best known as Bennings in The Thing, and Nurse Melissa, played by Susan Damante, both of whom are still acting, and musician Lloyd Harrington, played by the late Dean Stockwell. Stockwell died after I had recorded the review of his previous appearance in Columbo, so I just wanted to take this moment to mention what a sensational actor he was and what a varied career he enjoyed. I first became aware of him, as I'm sure many my age did, in the series Quantum Leap, which is just recently announced they'll be remaking, so we'll have to see if they can make that happen and if anyone can replace Stockwell's brilliant performance as Al. His career extended far beyond that, though, playing so many different characters over the years, and he will be sadly missed. The three are discussing Lloyd's obsession with the ship's singer, Rosanna Wells, played by Poupée Beaucar, who retired from acting after this role. Lloyd goes to speak to her to rekindle their romance, and she rejects him. We are then back with Danziger, who has used his freshly cut key to enter Lloyd's room and leave some incriminating evidence. He then goes to Rosanna's room and hides a gun there before Rosanna walks in, and it's revealed that they have been having an affair, which Rosanna is attempting to blackmail him with. After slapping her, he leaves, and while on deck, he makes his way around the ship before purposely sniffing something that causes him to collapse into the pool. He's rescued by other passengers and taken straight to the doctor, who makes him rest in the ship's hospital, as it would appear that he's had a heart attack. We then cut between Rosanna performing for the guests and Danziger putting the rest of his plan in motion. He steals some surgical gloves and hides them in his bed before Nurse Melissa checks his vitals. She says she'll be back at 11:30, then gets back to smoking her cigarette, if you needed proof that this is the 1970s. Danziger sneaks out, steals a steward's uniform, and makes his way to Rosanna's room again. Rosanna takes a break from his performance, and Lloyd follows her to apologise, but she ignores him and leaves. As she changes costumes in her room, Danziger appears, shoots her, using a pillow to somewhat silence the shot. He then draws an L in lipstick on the mirror. He rushes back the way he came, hiding the gun, changing back into his pyjamas and returning to his sickbed. The band wonder where Rosanna is, and Artie goes to check on her, just as Nurse Melissa checks on Danziger, who is back in his bed. It seems like everything has gone to plan for Danziger. He has his alibi, a patsy, and a motive that no one else could possibly know about. This is another fairly long setup, but as well as developing the plot, adds character development to all the main players, so I think it's well deserved. We know exactly what happened and who everyone involved is, so it's just a question of how Columbo will solve it. Danziger is pretty unlucky to have chosen the one cruise Columbo is on to commit what would otherwise be a baffling crime. They do a really good job of establishing the geography of the ship, just enough so that it's not utterly baffling what has happened and how he's committed the murder. With the murder discovered, the purser comes to see Columbo, who assumes he's come about his wife.
It's not about my wife, is it? I mean, she likes to have a good time. Sometimes she gets carried away.
It's not about your wife, son.
The purser explains and Columbo investigates. However, being on board the ship, or boat as Columbo continues to call it, they are limited with the number of the resources that they have and the fact that the captain wants to keep it as quiet as possible. Also, Columbo is suffering with some seasickness and so goes to the hospital before he can investigate much further. While at the hospital, he spots a feather and starts to get suspicious. He asks the nurse about the hospital schedule and if she has any patients, then sneaks in to see Danziger, and it seems like he has his man. Columbo and the doctor agree death would have been instant, so how did she write the L? Unable to speak with Danziger while he's resting, Columbo speaks with Artie about Lloyd, who says Lloyd isn't capable of doing it. He then speaks to Lloyd, who is shocked. They go to his room, where the captain confines him to his quarters, and Columbo asks for it to be searched, but is doubtful that he did it. We then cut to a bullet catch magic trick in the entertainment lounge, and it looks like Lloyd has a twin. If we hadn't seen Danziger do it, I would suspect the evil twin. The crew find the receipt Danziger planted. It was for the murder weapon. The next day, Columbo goes to see Danziger. He pretends not to know Rosanna and questions whether Columbo has any jurisdiction. Vaughan plays a really excellent murderer. He makes it fairly clear he's the villain, but that he thinks he's been far too clever to be caught. So while not actually coming out and saying he did it, it's no wonder Columbo was onto him so quickly. When he does get away from Columbo, he disposes of the key-cutting device overboard and can now continue to cover the rest of his tracks. Meanwhile, the gun had been found, as Danziger intended. Columbo does some rudimentary fingerprinting on the gun and asks for a mattress. Danziger has been invited by Columbo to meet him as he does this, and in his arrogance, Danziger has turned up. Naturally, Columbo finds no prints and explains to Danziger it doesn't make sense why Lloyd kept the receipt for the murder weapon. He then gets Danziger to fire a bullet into the mattress so he can check the ballistics, but he's also checking out how Danziger reacts to being asked to do this. He continues to question Danziger without Danziger realizing it, and he stays with him for a while, all the time Danziger trying to push Columbo towards Lloyd, making him look more and more guilty in Columbo's eyes. It's great to see Columbo spend so much time with his main suspect. We're seeing more and more of that in these longer episodes, which is definitely a bonus, as he presents question after question to the murderer, who always explains away each question until that potential situation comes up with a question that the murderer can't answer. It's the element of the show that I enjoy the most after Falk's performance. Columbo then checks how long it would take to get from the hospital to Rosanna's room and back again, and whether any surgical gloves are missing, which they are. But Lloyd is a diabetic and comes to the hospital daily, so it still could have been him. Columbo then goes to question Lloyd, who confirms that Rosanna had another lover, but he didn't know who it was. Columbo now has a theory of means, motive and opportunity. He just needs to be able to prove it. He finds out from the doctor that Danziger could have faked a heart attack by taking a sniff of amyl nitrate, and Columbo finds an empty packet of it in the pool filter. He reveals this to the captain, along with Danziger's pulse being high after 11:30, after making the run from Rosanna's cabin. He then asks Danziger if he might have seen Lloyd at the hospital stealing gloves, and if he can find the gloves, he will be able to catch Lloyd. Columbo has once again set the trap, and Danziger falls for the trap immediately and steals another pair of gloves. He takes the magician's gun to make sure the gloves have powder burns on them, and then hides them in a place they will definitely be found, and then waits. As if by magic, they are found, and Columbo calls Danziger to watch as he looks for powder marks, or so Danziger thinks. Columbo is actually going to fingerprint the inside of the gloves, the very gloves Danziger just put his fingerprints all over. As Columbo slowly takes Danziger through all this, he seems to actually be revelling in this gotcha a little. Danziger says there are his fingerprints, but he's unable to give an explanation as to why, and he's forced to confess. Columbo reveals that he was already on to Danziger the moment he found the feather in the hospital. The episode ends with Columbo still looking for his wife, and still unable to tell the difference between a ship and a boat.
Do I still have time to catch that ship?
Yes, you can. And, Lieutenant, that's a boat.
Oh, that's a... And...
This is another great episode. It's well paced for a 95-minute, and the performances are all excellent. The murder plot is intriguing and the gotcha is perfect. It's a lot of fun to see Columbo out of his comfort zone, but not so much as it becomes farcical. It's a little unbelievable that murder followed him on holiday, but as this is not a common plot device for the show, I can easily overlook it. The humour is mostly very subtle and light, and with the exception of the fairly large continuity error, which I'm not sure how they made, everything works really well. Vaughan is great as the smug, egotistical Danziger, and Stockwell plays the victim of his frame-up just right. I can't really fault this episode, and I've always enjoyed it. For that reason, it's another 5 out of 5 from me. Thank you. Goodbye.